Just 24 hours before his predicted death, a powerful real estate tycoon made a bizarre agreement with the homeless girl who had just stolen from him. "Pretend to be my daughter for just one day." His family dismissed it as the delirium of a dying man. Doctors shook their heads in helplessness, but no one suspected that this insane request would be the key to unlocking a secret buried for 20 years within the girl's tattered locket. When the heart monitor in the ICU flatlined, signaling death, that very secret sparked a miracle that modern medicine could not explain. How could a stolen pastry save a life and alter the destiny of an entire dynasty? The answer lies within the next few minutes of this story. If you are listening from anywhere in the world, please leave a comment and subscribe, because there are truths that need to be shared, even if they shake your beliefs. There are stories that, no matter how painful, must be told. The hospital room sat in a heavy, deathly silence, broken only by the rhythmic beeping of the machines keeping William alive. The pale glow of the monitors cast ghostly shadows on the white walls, creating an atmosphere where time seemed to stand still. At 68 years old, the successful real estate entrepreneur from Richmond, Virginia, found himself imprisoned in his own body for exactly 47 days, a state he never imagined experiencing. His grey hair, once always well trimmed, now grew disheveled on the hospital pillow, and his skin, formerly tanned from morning walks around his luxury gated community, presented a terrifying pallor. Even the defined line of his jaw seemed to have lost strength, hanging like a cruel reminder of his condition. With eyes closed in a coma but a mind in full activity, William followed every movement around him. His senses, now sharper due to the lack of physical control, perceived even the nuances of whispered conversations between the nurses and doctors. He had heard in detail every discouraging diagnosis given to his family, each more frequent and grim. "My God, is this my punishment? Is this the hell I built for myself 20 years ago?" he thought incessantly, an anguish tearing at his soul far deeper than any physical paralysis. For 47 days, he had been trapped not just in his body, but in the looped nightmare of that rainy Tuesday in 1998, the day he turned his back on his pregnant daughter. In this silence, the beep of the monitor wasn't measuring time. It was counting the seconds he had wasted in pride. Every beat echoed the slam of the door when Emily left. He wanted to scream, not to save his life, but to beg for a forgiveness he knew he didn't deserve. The hours dragged on, turning into a silent, endless torture of regret. That afternoon, the chief physician and neurologist of the Virginia General Hospital entered the room with heavy steps that William already knew well. The sound of soles against the ceramic floor resonated, bringing with it an almost tangible gravity. Tall, in his 50 seconds, with experience showing in every wrinkle of expression, the doctor seemed to carry an invisible weight on his shoulders. William felt that this was not only the weight of bad news, but also of the decisions the doctor did not want to take. Beside him was Ethan, William's son, a 5-year-old man who had inherited his piercing green eyes and the same determination in business. He held his tablet with trembling hands. The tension between father and son, even in silence, was almost palpable. "Doctor, it's been almost 2 months. How much longer are we going to keep this situation going? I can't watch my father waste away like this day after day," whispered Ethan with a broken voice. William felt a pang in his chest that had nothing to do with his physical condition. It was pain, guilt, and despair mixed in a whirlwind. He wanted to scream at his son that he was still there, that he hadn't given up, but the immobile body was a prison that prevented any communication. The doctor remained silent for a few seconds, analyzing the tablet he brought with him. His tired eyes scanned the numbers and charts with a seriousness that made Ethan squeeze his father's hand even tighter. The silence was interrupted only by the constant beeping of the heart monitor, marking William's heartbeats like the passing of time. The neurological indicators have not presented any significant improvement in the last few weeks. In fact, some patterns suggest progressive deterioration, explained the doctor, adjusting his glasses with a gesture that betrayed his discomfort. His voice was controlled, but couldn't disguise the shadow of defeat he carried. William felt every word like a stab. His mind screamed, protested, but his body remained immobile, a traitor to his own desires. Tears that couldn't flow burned him inside as he remembered moments with his son, unfinished conversations, advice not given. "Son, I'm here. Please don't give up on me." "I still have so much to tell you, to teach you," he shouted in thought, but only the monotonous beep of the machines answered his silent pleas. He wanted to relive the days when Ethan accompanied him on Harrison Incorporated projects. He wanted to remind him of his late sister and tell him stories about her, ask him about every detail of his life, absorbing the world the son viewed with a young man's curiosity. Now, everything seemed as distant as a dream that would never be accessible again. The doctor continued his evaluation, moving through the room with the familiarity of someone who knows every inch of that space. The grey hair at his temples and the impeccably pressed white coat gave him an aura of authority that even William, in his current state, could perceive. "Ethan, we have to be realistic. Keeping him connected to these machines might no longer be what your father would have wanted. He was always a man of action, decisive," pondered the doctor, placing a comforting hand on the son's shoulder. The weight of the words fell on the environment like a silent avalanche. Ethan collapsed into an armchair near the window, where the late afternoon light painted elongated shadows on the hospital floor. His face, normally composed and professional, was now marked by deep, dark circles and a beard of several days without shaving. "You know, doctor, my father always said that life must be lived with dignity. He built an empire from scratch. He raised me alone after Mom died. He never accepted depending on anyone. He is a strong man. He lost my sister Emily some years ago, and that almost destroyed him, but he stood firm. And now, seeing him like this," his voice failed, choked by memories. He remembered the mornings his father prepared a rushed breakfast, the encouraging smile before sports competitions, and the severe but fair lessons in business. The sunset cast its last rays through the window when Ethan finally made his decision. William could feel the gravity of the moment by the way his son squeezed his hand as if seeking strength or forgiveness. "Doctor, he isn't going to wake up anymore. Let's disconnect the machines tomorrow," declared Ethan, with a firmness that barely managed to mask his broken heart. William, however, could not accept that. His heart, invisible to everyone's eyes, screamed desperately. "No, I am still here. Don't give up on me. Not yet." The nurse who had cared for William since his admission entered the room for the nightly check of vital signs. Her movements were gentle, almost maternal, as she adjusted the tubes and checked the medications. "Mr. Ethan, do you want me to bring you coffee? You haven't eaten anything for hours," she offered with the kindness that characterized her. "No thanks, nurse. I need to sort out the documents for tomorrow," he replied, his voice breaking on the last word. During the night, while Ethan slept in the armchair next to him, William fought a desperate internal battle. Every memory, every moment unlived, every word unsaid transformed into a silent scream of protest against his destiny. "I can't leave like this. I need to tell Ethan about his sister, about the secrets I kept for so long. Please, God, give me one more chance," he implored in his silent prison. The next morning, the doctor arrived early, accompanied by his team. The doctor's steps in the hallway resonated like an omen, an inevitable march toward the room. Their countenances were somber, burdened with the responsibility of ending a life. The sun had barely risen, and a pale light invaded the room through the half-open blinds, illuminating Ethan's haggard face, who hadn't slept a wink all night. The deep, dark circles and disheveled beard told the story of an emotional battle fought in silence. Hearing footsteps, he got up from the armchair beside his father's bed, as if he were about to face a final judgment. "Are you ready, son?" asked the doctor, putting a comforting hand on Ethan's shoulder. His voice was low but carried the weight of someone who had pronounced those words many times before. Ethan took a deep breath, hesitating for a moment as he looked at William's motionless face. I don't know if anyone can really be ready for something like this, doctor. But it's what my father would have wanted, isn't it?" he replied, his voice choked with emotion. The silence in the room seemed denser than ever, almost suffocating. The nurse entered right behind, bringing the med cart and checking the monitors with precision. Her movements, always so careful, now seemed even slower, as if she wanted to delay the inevitable. Ethan held his father's hand for the last time, a strong grip charged with love and despair. "Dad, forgive me. I just want you to have peace. Thank you for everything you taught me, for everything you sacrificed for me. I will never forget it. I will love you every day of my life," he murmured, with tears rolling freely down his face. As the doctor began the procedure, Adjusting the parameters of the devices, William gathered all the strength he had left. He could hear it all, and his mind boiled in a desperate effort. His will to live, overcoming the body's limitations, concentrated every fragment of energy on a single goal: to move. First, a slight tingling ran through his fingers, a sensation he hadn't experienced for weeks. "Please, God, allow me to show that I am still here," he begged internally. Then, it happened. An almost imperceptible movement of his fingers. It was enough to break the tension in the room. The nurse was the first to notice, letting out a small gasp of surprise that caught everyone's attention. "Wait, he moved his fingers," she exclaimed, leaning over the bed to confirm. All eyes turned to William, and the impossible continued to unfold before them. Slowly, his eyes began to open, blinking against the light that seemed to dazzle his weakened senses. "Dad, Dad, do you hear me? You're really here." It feels like a true miracle, doesn't it? Seeing a family pull back from the brink of loss warms the heart. But hold your breath, because sometimes fate gives with one hand only to take away with the other. What happens next will test their hope like never before. Ethan could barely contain his emotion. He grabbed William's hand, who now squeezed his back, a weak gesture, but charged with meaning. Tears flowed freely down the son's face, an indescribable relief mixed with disbelief. The doctor, who had frozen for a moment, quickly recovered his professional composure. "This is a miracle. We need to run tests immediately. Nurse, prepare the CT scan room," he ordered, his voice charged with urgency and contained enthusiasm. "Son," murmured William, his voice hoarse from disuse but full of a love that common words could never express. The simple words seemed like a balm for Ethan's soul, who wept openly while holding his father's hand. "Father, forgive me. Forgive me for almost giving up on you. I was so lost, so desperate," he sobbed, unable to complete the sentence. William looked at his son, his eyes conveying a message of understanding and forgiveness that didn't need words to be understood. However, the joy in the room was abruptly interrupted. A lacerating pain shot through William's head like a lightning bolt, and his face contracted in agony. The monitors began to beep frantically, and the mood of celebration instantly transformed into worry. "He's in a lot of pain. We have to act fast," exclaimed the nurse, already adjusting the devices and administering painkillers according to the doctor's indications. The doctor frowned, his expression of jubilation replaced by intense professional concern. "We need an urgent CT scan. Something is wrong. Ethan, I need you to wait here while we take care of this," he said, leaving quickly with the team and pushing William's bed down the hallway. The minutes that followed seemed like an eternity to Ethan, who remained seated in the room's armchair, staring at the empty space where his father had been moments before. He could still feel the warmth of William's hand on his fingers, a tangible reminder that, although for a short time, he had returned. "Please, God, don't take him now. I need him. We still have so much to resolve," he murmured to himself, eyes fixed on the floor. Hours later, the doctor returned to the room, his face revealing the gravity of the results. Ethan stood up immediately, anxiety overflowing in his gestures. "What happened, doctor? Is my father okay?" he asked, his voice charged with urgency. The doctor sighed deeply before responding, his expression now laden with sadness. "It is truly a miracle that he woke up, but the CT scan revealed that the main aneurysm has grown significantly. Furthermore, we found other smaller ones forming in different areas of the brain. Any surgical intervention would be fatal. He has at most 1 month. That is, of course, if the aneurysm doesn't rupture before then," he explained with a voice that barely managed to hide the sadness. Now sitting in his hospital bed, William watched the city of Richmond through the window. The sun began to set again, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink that he had never truly appreciated before. His thoughts wandered between memories of the past and possibilities of the future, a future he now knew would be drastically short. "If I only have a month to live, I need to use it wisely," he reflected as the twilight shadows danced on his tired face. 3 days after receiving the news that would change his life, William left the hospital against all medical recommendations. The millionaire refused to spend his last days between white walls and the smell of medicine. He knew time was short, but more than that, he knew life needed meaning, and he wouldn't find it locked in a bed. In his bedroom at Harrison Manor, he adjusted his grey silk tie in front of the antique mirror, the same one that had witnessed so many mornings of success throughout his life. Every fold of the fabric was adjusted with care, his hands now trembling, betraying the effort the simple task cost him. Ethan is going to kill me when he finds out I went out alone, but I need to do this. I need to go back there one last time. I need to smell that scent one more time, he murmured to his reflection, which returned a determined but tired gaze. His bodyguards watched his every move discreetly, attentive to the slightest sign of weakness, following strict instructions from Ethan. They kept a respectful distance, but always close enough to act if necessary. The black Cadillac Escalade glided smoothly through the streets of downtown, the wheels murmuring against the asphalt as the city slowly woke up. Years have passed, and that place still has the power to make me feel like a kid again. How can a simple suite hold so many memories? He thought, as he wiped a stubborn tear that threatened to run down. The facade of the bakery remained practically unaltered, with its arched windows and light yellow paint chipping slightly at the corners, exactly as in his memories. The bell on the door chimed when William pushed the glass door, leaning heavily on his cane. Each step he took sounded like an echo of his determination. The aroma of hot chocolate and puff pastry enveloped him like a warm hug from an old friend, filling the void of so many decades of absence. Ah, how I used to bring the kids here every Sunday after church service. Emily always begged for one more sweet, while Ethan methodically calculated his money. He remembered, feeling the weight of memories gravitate on his shoulders. The mirrored display cases reflected his aged face, but his eyes saw beyond the present. He saw the little girl Emily with ribbons in her hair, pressing her nose against the glass, enchanted by the colorful sweets. He saw the teenage Ethan, always serious in his youth, organizing the quarters he had saved during the week. The sound of children's laughter echoed in his memory, mixing with the current murmur of the bakery. He could almost hear Emily's high-pitched voice pleading for one more chocolate bonbon, while Ethan grumbled that it was a waste of money. "My little Emily, how your father misses you. Soon we will meet, my dear daughter," he whispered to the reflection in the glass, which only returned his tired gaze. William approached the old counter. The shopkeeper, a lady with grey hair and a kind smile, waited patiently for his order, her eyes shining with silent empathy. His eyes scanned the display case, stopping at the tray of chocolate eclairs arranged elegantly on paper lace. It was her favorite. "Emily always said the chocolate eclairs from here tasted like happiness," he murmured to himself as he pointed to the sweet. The shopkeeper smiled, wrapping the order carefully as if she understood the importance of that moment for him. With slow and measured steps, William headed to the wooden bench outside the bakery. The morning sun warmed his face, and he closed his eyes for a moment, letting himself be enveloped by the feeling of peace that place brought him. The chocolate eclair rested in his hands, perfectly wrapped in tissue paper, as it had always been. The sweet and comforting aroma brought back an avalanche of memories, but also the weight of the secrets he had kept for so long. Some pleasures in life must be savored for the last time. "Right, my daughter," he said quietly, his heart heavy with longing for his daughter. Across the street, a small homeless girl watched the movement in the bakery, her hungry eyes fixed on every person who came out carrying scented packages. Her dark, messy hair fell over her thin face, and her worn-out clothes betrayed days, perhaps weeks, of deprivation. Her stomach roared relentlessly, reminding her of the last 72 hours without a decent meal. "Why can they have so much while I have nothing? Has anyone ever felt this hungry? I would love so much to eat a sweet. It must be delicious," she thought, as her dirty fingernails dug into the palms of her hands, seeking to contain the growing despair. The security guards maintained a strategic distance, but their attentive eyes never left their boss unprotected. As he sat on the outside of the bakery, one of the guards noticed every movement on the street, every person who passed too close. The other kept his hand near his holster, trained to react to the slightest sign of a threat. "Mr. Ethan will fire us if something happens to his father. We need to be even more attentive now," whispered one of them, aware of their boss's current fragility. The soft morning breeze carried the aroma of sweets to the young girl, torturing her senses already sharpened by hunger. Her childish eyes fixed on the chocolate eclair in the elderly gentleman's hands, who seemed lost in thought. The delicately wrapped sweet looked delicious from her child's point of view. "That's sweet. Mom used to talk about a sweet just like that in her stories before she died," she thought, a phantom memory surfacing from the fog of her early childhood. It wasn't just hunger gnawing at her stomach. It was a starving soul desperate for a taste of the love she had lost. The man holding it looked as broken as she felt. A king in a castle of sadness. She didn't want to steal. She wanted to share in a memory that didn't belong to her anymore. But survival is a cruel master. The moment of decision came like a lightning bolt. Driven by a hunger that was as much emotional as it was physical, the young girl crossed the street running. Her bare feet, calloused by countless previous escapes, barely made noise against the asphalt. In a quick and precise movement, her small, agile hands grabbed the sweet from William's hands, who barely had time to process what was happening. "Excuse me, sir, but this looks delicious," she shouted, already bolting down the street while flashing a mischievous smile of an innocent child. One of the guards reacted instantly, years of training guiding his movements. His weapon was already in his hand, aimed in the direction of the little thief in flight. But before he could take a step, William's voice cut the air like a whip. "No, put that gun down." In that split second, William didn't just save a frightened girl. He might have just saved himself without knowing it. It makes you wonder how a simple act of mercy can change the course of destiny. But neither William nor Harper knows the incredible secret that is about to link them forever. Stay tuned. Something in the amused look of that girl had deeply disturbed the old businessman, awakening memories he had fought to keep buried for decades. Harper's lungs burned as she ran through the streets of downtown Richmond, clutching the chocolate eclair against her chest as if it were the most precious asset in the world. Every breath was a painful effort, and the sound of her bare feet hitting the ground echoed among the tall grey buildings. The alleys and shortcuts of the urban labyrinth she knew so well now seemed to lengthen, conspiring so she would never reach a safe place. The cold stones under her feet were covered in mud, and every step was a risk of slipping, but she continued. It was as if despair gave her strength. Just a little more, and I'll stop. My God, I've never stolen before, but this time I couldn't resist. This little sweet looks wonderful. Why did I have to choose just that man with such a sad look, she thought, while hot, stubborn tears clouded her already blurred vision. Every time she remembered that man's gaze, an unbearable oppression took over her chest. There was something in his eyes that pleaded for mercy, as if he also carried his own pain. And yet, even knowing that, she couldn't help it. Her stomach seemed like a bottomless pit, a pain that screamed louder than any compassion at that moment. If only there were another way. If only I had someone in this world. These repetitive and distressing thoughts echoed in her mind as her legs trembled with the effort to keep moving. Turning sharply into a narrow alley between two old buildings, Harper finally slowed her pace, her entire body shaking with adrenaline and the effort of escaping. The place was damp and dark, even at that hour of the morning, with peeling walls covered in faded graffiti. The smell of garbage and mold permeated the air, but Harper didn't have the strength to care. Everything seemed quiet there, except for the distant echoes of the city and the irregular sound of her gasping breath. Her hands gripped the sweet with such force that her knuckles were white, and the package was beginning to crumple. Just a little bit more. Just until my heart stops beating so fast, then I can taste this little sweet that must be the richest in the world, she whispered to herself, feeling the sweet aroma make her stomach dance with anxiety. Leaning against the cold wall, she tried to catch her breath. Every muscle in her body protested, her thin ribs rising and falling in an irregular rhythm as the air seemed insufficient to calm the fire in her lungs. She looked at the package in her hands, and for a brief moment, an almost imperceptible smile passed her lips. That sweet wasn't just food. It was a symbol of hope. It was the promise that, at least for an instant, her world would be that of a normal child eating something childish. It was then that a subtle movement caught her attention. Huddled against the opposite wall, partially hidden behind some cardboard boxes soaked by the previous day's rain, was a boy. He couldn't be more than 6 years old, but his eyes carried the weight of a whole lifetime of suffering. His clothes, several times larger than his skeletal body, hung like rags on his bony shoulders. He said nothing, but the look he cast at the package in Harper's hands was enough to break the silence between them. It was a look of hunger, but also of fear and resignation. How can there be so much injustice in the world? This boy is even younger than me. He must be starving too, she thought, feeling the weight of the sweet increase in her hands. The boy, Caleb, didn't move, as if any movement might make that moment disappear. His breathing was shallow but perceptible, almost like a constant whimper. Harper could see the protruding ribs beneath the dirty, baggy t-shirt. Her stomach knotted again, reminding her of her own pain, but something in the boy's gaze prevented her from giving in to hunger. It was as if the boy himself were challenging her humanity. Without saying a single word, she tried to look away, but couldn't. Every second that passed seemed to worsen the internal battle she fought with herself. He's so small. How long has it been since he ate something other than scraps? She murmured to herself, feeling hot tears slide down her dirty cheeks. Harper knew it wasn't easy to survive on the streets, but seeing him there, so defenseless, rekindled in her a desire to do something good. With a deep sigh that seemed to come from the bottom of her soul, Harper made her decision. Her legs still trembled as she took a hesitant step toward the boy. He, frightened, shrank even further against the wall, trying to hide behind the boxes. "Easy. I don't want to hurt you," she said, trying to sound as gentle as possible, but her voice failed, trembling like her body. It was hard to smile, but she tried, forcing a small, welcoming smile, although her cracked lips protested against the movement. Sometimes one needs to share, even when one has nothing, she thought, extending the sweet toward the little one. For a moment, the boy hesitated, his eyes going from the package to Harper's face and back to the package. It was as if he didn't believe something so precious could be offered to him. But then, slowly, his small, dirty and trembling hands reached for the package. The sweet was still intact, but it seemed more valuable than any treasure at that moment. Caleb's eyes filled with tears of emotion. The transformation on the boy's face was instantaneous. His eyes, previously dull with fear and hunger, shone with a joy so pure and emotional that Harper almost momentarily forgot her own hunger. His smile brought back a flash of joy to Harper's heart. "Thank you," the boy murmured, almost inaudibly, hugging the package as if it were his greatest treasure. He said nothing more, but the look of gratitude and relief said it all. At least today he will sleep without feeling pain in his stomach. At least today he will feel like a normal child, whispered Harper, feeling a strange peace despite the hunger that still consumed her. But the peace lasted only an instant. The sharp sound of sirens cut the air like a razor, echoing off the alley walls. The boy's smile disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by an expression of pure terror. Red and blue lights began to dance on the dark walls, turning the alley into a phantasmagorical scene. Harper felt her heart freeze when she heard heavy footsteps approaching both exits of the alley. The boots of the police and security guards resonated against the wet pavement, surrounding all possible escape routes. The boy, paralyzed by fear, squeezed the sweet against his chest with such force that his knuckles were white. Silent tears slid down his dirty face, while his whole body shook like a leaf in the wind. The sound of the police radios and authoritative voices got closer and closer, turning the temporary refuge into a trap. The security guards were the first to reach the alley, their dark silhouettes blocking the little light that entered. One of them pointed accusingly at the boy, his voice charged with anger echoing between the walls. "There! The sweet they stole is there!" he shouted, causing the little one to shrink uncontrollably. The sweet, still intact in his trembling hands, now seemed more like a sentence of condemnation than a gift. Without thinking twice, Harper placed herself between the boy and the men advancing, opening her arms like a human barrier. Her voice, normally shy and reserved, came out strong and clear, surprising herself. "He has nothing to do with this," she shouted, feeling her whole body shake but standing firm in her position. The police hesitated for a moment, surprised by the unexpected confession. "You can take me. You can do whatever you want with me, but leave him alone," she completed, her voice broken but determined. The police began to advance again, their heavy steps echoing like an omen of misfortune. The alley seemed to shrink, the walls closing in on them like a trap with no exit. It was then that a new sound cut the air, the soft roar of an imported engine. The imposing black Cadillac stopped at the entrance of the alley, its presence causing a momentary pause in the action. The door opened with a soft click, and William got out with difficulty, leaning on his cane. "Wait, I don't want to press charges," he said, his voice, although weak, carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "They are just children." The little boy, Caleb, still clutching the sweet against his chest with an almost desperate force, took advantage of the moment of distraction caused by William's arrival and escaped through a narrow passage between the buildings. His movements were quick, precise, as if he had already done it thousands of times. He disappeared into the darkness of the alley with the agility of a stray cat. Even with the weakness, his light steps barely made noise against the wet ground. He left behind only the subtle echo of his escape and the sweet scent of chocolate now intertwined with the smell of damp garbage that permeated the place. Harper remained motionless, frozen in the same spot where she had been seconds before, her arms still open as a shield for a child who was no longer there. Her body, rigid and tense, began to relax little by little as relief invaded her tired mind. For a brief moment, her accelerated and shallow breathing slowed down, and she felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The boy is safe. The thought brought a small flash of comfort amidst the chaos. At least he'll be able to eat the sweet in peace, she thought, and her cracked lips formed a small, involuntary smile. A smile that seemed strangely out of place in the situation, but the relief quickly gave way to a new wave of fear. She was alone now, face to face with the police officers and security guards. And William, the man whose dessert she had stolen, was the only one who could decide her fate. Her eyes rose slowly, meeting the imposing figure of the elderly businessman. He had taken a few steps forward, and each of his movements seemed to carry the weight of time and choices. William's face, marked by deep wrinkles, reflected more than age. It was a map of untold stories, unsurmounted losses, and feelings he seemed to wear like a second skin. William approached slowly, his careful steps echoing in the now silent alley, interrupted only by the distant sound of rain beginning to hit the tin roofs above. His expression was an enigma. There was no anger in his gaze as Harper had feared, but something subtler, something she couldn't decipher. It was almost as if he were lost in another time, in other memories. When he finally stopped a few feet from her, he dismissed the police and security guards with a calm but firm gesture. They hesitated, exchanging confused looks before backing away and leaving the alley to the two of them. Why isn't he angry? Why did he send them all away? Wondered Harper, her body still tense, muscles ready to flee at the slightest sign of danger. You must be very hungry, little one, said William, his kind voice breaking the heavy silence. The words were simple but charged with genuine concern that Harper didn't know how to interpret. Her stomach answered before she could think of a reply, a loud roar that echoed in the empty alley. The sound made William smile, a small smile, almost imperceptible, but one that seemed to illuminate his tired face for a brief moment. He took a step forward, leaning on his cane, and gestured toward the main street. His eyes, so charged with sadness, met hers with surprising softness. How about we go back to the bakery? You can choose all the sweets you want. My name is William. You can trust me, he offered, his voice coming out with a kindness that even he didn't expect. Harper hesitated, her bare feet shifting restlessly on the wet ground, her eyes going from William to the alley exit and back to him, every fiber of her being screamed to run. Years living on the streets had taught her to distrust any kindness, especially from strangers who seemed to have so much power. But there was something different about this man. Maybe it was the sadness in his eyes, a sadness she knew well. Or maybe it was just the hunger speaking louder, clouding her judgment. Her small, nervous hands played with the frayed hem of her t-shirt as she weighed her options. He looks as sad as I am. What if it's true? What if I can really eat all the sweets I've always dreamed of? She thought, allowing herself for a brief moment to believe. With a shy nod, Harper finally accepted the invitation. Okay, my name is Harper, she replied, but her legs, previously ready to flee, began to move slowly alongside William. The walk back to the bakery was done in silence. William dismissed the police and security guards who followed them confused, not understanding what the millionaire was doing. Harper kept a safe distance, her eyes attentive to every movement of the man. William, for his part, adjusted his steps to accompany the girl's hesitant pace, his cane tapping the ground with a rhythmic sound. The sky above them was now covered with heavy clouds, foreshadowing an imminent storm. Each step seemed like an eternity, but when they finally arrived at the bakery, the sweet and welcoming aroma, escaping through the open door, enveloped Harper like a hug, making her stomach roar once more. Upon entering, Harper's eyes opened wide at the display case full of colorful sweets, each one more attractive than the other. She pressed her nose against the glass again, eyes shining with fascination as she tried to absorb every detail. Her hands left dirty marks on the clean glass, and the lady from the bakery, with a look of disapproval, began to approach. But William, with a subtle gesture, indicated that everything was fine. He watched the girl with an expression that mixed fascination and pain, as if he were seeing someone he knew very well. "You can choose whatever you want, little one. Today will be your special day," he said, his voice charged with an emotion he couldn't explain. Shortly after, the table by the window was full of sweets of all kinds: chocolate eclairs, strawberry shortcakes, candies, and much more. Harper, initially shy, soon gave in to the hunger consuming her. Each bite was savored with a reverence that made William smile. He watched her in silence, enchanted by the resemblance between her and his daughter. "It's like going back in time, as if God had given me one last chance to see my little Emily," he thought, his hands trembling slightly as he held the cane. "You remind me a lot of my daughter. I have 2 children, Ethan and Emily, but my daughter is gone," said William, breaking the silence. His voice was low but full of feeling. "She would do something like what you did, you know, steal a sweet just for the mischief. It was just like her to do something like that." Harper stopped chewing, looking at him with curiosity, her eyes full of questions she dared not ask. "That was how she cleaned her mouth too, all clumsy," murmured William, more to himself than to her, watching her wipe her lips with the back of her hand. When the last sweets were devoured, Harper, now relaxed, played with the napkins, folding them in clumsy ways. William, lost in his thoughts, continued to watch her. The rain outside increased, drops hitting against the glass in a constant rhythm. Harper finally stood up, smoothing her worn dress with nervous gestures. "Thank you for the sweets, sir. I'm sorry for stealing earlier. I couldn't resist. Forgive me," she murmured, her words almost drowned out by the sound of the rain. William watched her as she left, huddled against the cold and rain, with no protection against the inclement drops falling on her, soaking her and making her shiver. Something inside William stirred, and he made a decision before she disappeared completely. He stood up quickly, ignoring the pain that ran through his body, and called out, "Wait, do you want to pretend to be my daughter for a day? Just one day to keep me company?" he said, with the longing for his daughter implicit in every word. He just wanted a way to kill the nostalgia for Emily before leaving. "This little girl reminds me so much of my late daughter," he thought. Harper looked at William for a few moments, her mind trying to process the words he had just said. The cold rain continued to run down her face, mixing with the tears she hadn't even realized she was shedding. For a moment, everything around her seemed to disappear, leaving only her and that surreal proposal. The idea sounded like a dream in her ears. A whole day pretending to have a family. A whole day being treated like a normal child. Something she had never experienced. Her fingers instinctively squeezed the small locket hidden under her soaked blouse, the only tangible vestige of a past she barely remembered. It was all she had of her mother, a memory she carried with her like an amulet against the emptiness of loneliness. "Yes, sir. I would like very much to be your daughter, at least for a day. It is my dream to have a family," the girl shouted back, her voice trembling as much as her wet and cold body. Harper nodded, almost without realizing it. "Just one day. Just one day being someone's daughter again," she whispered to herself, the words sounding like a hesitant prayer. She took the first steps toward the luxury car waiting by the curb. The sound of her bare feet against the puddled ground resonated softly, every movement charged with uncertainty and a strange hope. Upon arriving near the vehicle, she cast one last look at the street behind her, as if to make sure this wasn't a trap. William watched her enter with a sad look, wishing he could do more for the girl. "I can't offer her more than a day, not when I don't know if I'll be alive after tomorrow. If I could, I would take care of this girl. Her eyes are even similar to my Emily's," he thought, eyes full of tears. When the car door was opened by a uniformed driver, Harper hesitated again. The interior seemed to belong to another world. Soft leather seats, new car smell, a heater that soon began to dissipate the cold wrapping her body. William entered right behind, and she shrank into the back seat, trying to occupy the least space possible. She was aware of her wet clothes that would stain the impeccable upholstery and the dirt on her hands that seemed out of place in such a refined environment. Her curious eyes scanned every detail of the car, from the buttons on the dashboard to the small shiny cup holders on the sides. "It's like those fairy tales, but tomorrow, when the enchantment ends, I'll go back to being just me," she thought. a mix of joy and melancholy fighting inside her heart. The silence in the car was almost oppressive. William seemed immersed in his own thoughts, while Harper played nervously with the locket on her neck. The object was a kind of anchor for her. Her thin fingers traced repeatedly the worn contour of the metal, while her mind spun, alternating between excitement and fear of what was to come. When the car passed through the ornamental iron gates, the view of Harrison Manor made Harper hold her breath. The imposing construction looked like a castle out of a fantasy story, with its ancient stone walls rising majestically against the grey sky. The rain falling gave a soft shine to the immense gardens stretching around it, a green carpet that seemed never-ending. The girl's eyes opened wide at the tall windows, carved columns, and the grand marble staircase leading to the main entrance. Her small hands pressed against the glass of the car window, leaving marks that fogged the view of the world of wealth opening before her. Is this how real people live? With houses that look like castles and endless gardens? She murmured to herself, feeling smaller than ever. Not everyone, but some, yes, replied William, giving a slight smile, seeing the girl's childish emotion. The car stopped smoothly in front of the main entrance, and William got out first, extending his hand to help her. Harper hesitated before accepting the gesture, her bare feet meeting the cold stone ground cautiously. The frigid wind enveloped her, but she followed William's steps, her shy movements echoing on the marble floor of the entrance hall. Crystal chandeliers from the high ceiling cast a golden light, reflecting on the antique furniture and artworks adorning the walls. The girl turned slowly, her eyes trying to absorb every detail of that environment that seemed to come out of a dream. The contrast between her dirty feet and the impeccably polished floor made her chest tighten. She bit her lower lip in a nervous gesture. A sudden movement caused the locket Harper wore around her neck to come loose, falling with a metallic clink on the marble floor. The small golden object slid a few inches before stopping at William's feet. Harper crouched immediately, heart racing, but he was faster. With difficulty, the businessman leaned over and picked up the locket, his trembling fingers touching the worn surface. Before she could stop him, he opened the small clasp with a soft click. "No, please, it's the only thing I have," exclaimed Harper, her voice coming out as an anguished whisper. She tried to reach for the locket but froze upon seeing William's reaction. When the locket opened, it revealed an old and yellowed photograph. The smiling face of a young woman looked at him, and the blood froze in his veins. For an instant, he couldn't breathe, his gaze moving from the photo and seeing his daughter in the image. The girl wore a cord with the photo of his Emily. She probably found it somewhere on the street. But William felt the shock run through his body. "Where did you find this? Why do you have a photo of my Emmy?" William began to ask, his voice trembling, but the sentence was interrupted by the sound of furious steps echoing in the hall. Ethan, William's son, appeared at the top of the stairs, his expression a mix of disbelief and anger. His eyes went immediately down to Harper, scanning her to her disheveled hair. He stood motionless for a moment, as if trying to understand the scene unfolding below. Then, coming down the steps quickly, he exploded in shouts that cut the air like a blade. "Dad, are you trying to replace her? Is that it?" Ethan yelled, his voice cracking not just with anger, but with the reopenings of an old wound. He looked at Harper, and for a terrifying second, he didn't see a homeless girl. He saw the ghost of his sister, Emily. The resemblance was a dagger to his heart. You drove Emily away with your stubbornness, and now you drag a stranger in from the street to soothe your guilty conscience. You can't just buy a new family. "Dad," he gestured violently, pointing at Harper as if she were the embodiment of the grief he had tried to bury for years. "Ethan, please, listen to me." William tried to argue, but his tired voice was almost drowned out by his son's shouts. The locket in his hands seemed to weigh a ton, the photograph inside it calling his attention like an enigma needing deciphering. Harper, for her part, remained motionless, leaning against the cold marble wall, her wide eyes alternating between father and son, the storm of emotions inside reflecting the chaos taking over the manor. "This girl just needs help, son. Why can't you understand that?" murmured William, his voice charged with emotion. Every word was a plea, but also carried a tone of weariness that seemed to reflect years of internal struggle. He looked at Harper again, as if seeking answers in her. "Dad, this makes no sense. You can't just pick up anyone from the street and bring them here," continued Ethan, his steps echoing in the hall while he gestured furiously. What is happening to you? William opened his mouth to answer, but a wave of sudden pain shot through his head like a knife. He brought his hand to his temple, his vision beginning to darken as his legs gave way. The locket slipped from his hand, falling with a metallic sound against the floor. Before anyone could react, the businessman's body gave way and collapsed on the cold marble. It is heartbreaking, isn't it? Just as the pieces of the past were finally coming together, darkness falls again. You have to feel for Harper, standing there amidst the chaos of a family she doesn't understand yet. But don't stop listening now, because this young girl is about to show us what true courage looks like. William's body lay motionless on the marble floor, while panic spread through the mansion like fire in dry straw. The sound of crystal chandeliers swaying gently on the ceiling seemed to amplify the feeling of despair taking over everyone in the grand hall. Ethan, momentarily forgetting his anger, fell to his knees beside his father, his hands trembling as they held the fainted man's shoulder. His face, previously contorted with fury, now expressed pure terror. The tension in his jaw made his words come out broken. "Dad, Dad, wake up." He shook William hard, but the man remained motionless, breathing weak, almost imperceptible. The staff ran in all directions like ants in a disturbed anthill, their voices overlapping in a chorus of fear and worry. Some shouted orders, while others simply stood paralyzed by the scene. The hall of Harrison Manor, normally an example of order and elegance, with its antique furniture and artworks, had transformed into a scene of chaos. "Call the doctor now, and someone do something with that girl," shouted Ethan, his voice echoing off the walls, charged with despair. He looked at the faces of the employees around him, his red eyes pleading for action while tears threatened to overflow. An older employee, her face wrinkled by time and worry, approached Harper carefully. Her steps were hesitant, but her voice was soft. "Come, dear, let's get out of here," she said, her expression carrying the calm missing in the others. Harper remained paralyzed, eyes fixed on William's inert body, as if trying to understand what was happening, wishing she could change events. With gentle but firm gestures, the employee led the girl away from that disturbing scene. They went up the main staircase to the upper floor, steps echoing under their feet. Harper couldn't look away, looking back as if at any moment William might get up and call her. The steps seemed endless. Every step was like a burden, taking Harper away from the only man who had shown kindness to her in years. "Everything will be fine, little one. The boss is strong. He always was," whispered the employee, more to herself than to the girl. Her words floated in the air like empty comfort, a desperate attempt to bring normality to a situation that was clearly far from it. The guest room Harper was taken to was bigger than any place she had slept in her life. A king-size bed with impeccable white Egyptian cotton sheets occupied the center of the room. Light blue silk curtains danced slightly with the breeze entering through the French window, bringing the smell of the storm roaring outside. The lamp on the ceiling cast a soft light, creating shadows on walls decorated with paintings. Harper didn't know if they were real or just expensive copies. "Everything here seems too pretty to be true," she thought, as her eyes scanned the environment with a mix of admiration and discomfort. The employee opened a door to the side, revealing a bathroom that seemed worthy of a palace. The floor and walls were covered in shiny white marble, and a bathtub so large it looked more like a small pool occupied the center. Golden faucets, detailedly sculpted, reflected the light, dazzling Harper's eyes for a moment. The woman turned the faucet carefully, letting hot water flow, filling the room with a comforting cloud of steam. "Take a hot bath, dear. I'll bring clean clothes, and then we have to take care of those wounds. Don't worry about the boss. He has an excellent medical team," said the employee, pointing with a maternal gesture to Harper's scratched legs. Her voice had a tone of sweetness Harper hadn't heard in years, and that made her eyes fill with silent tears. While the hot water enveloped her body, Harper tried to process the events of that day. The drops from the bath mixed with the tears running down her face. The scene of William collapsing continued to repeat in her mind, every detail becoming more vivid with each repetition. "It was my fault. He got sick because of me," she thought, her chest tightening with an anguish that seemed to have no end. She felt small and helpless, like always, but now there was something more, a guilt eating her up inside. From the floor below, agitated voices and hurried steps continued to echo through the mansion. The family doctor had arrived in record time, his leather bag hitting against his legs as he went up the stairs to the main room. Harper managed to hear fragments of conversations through the thick walls, but no word was clear enough to give her a clue of what was happening. The silence that followed after the doctor's steps was even more terrifying. Silence means something went wrong, she thought, pressing the locket against her chest as if it could protect her from the worst. Dressed in clean, soft clothes that felt made of clouds, Harper sat on the edge of the huge bed, her now clean feet barely touching the Persian rug covering the room's floor. Every minute seemed like an eternity. She could barely hear the thunder of the storm outside. Such was the tension enveloping her. "Please, God, don't let him die. He was the only good person I found after so long," she whispered, her voice low and hesitant, while holding the locket she had picked up from the floor in a nervous gesture when she saw the millionaire fallen. The sound of heavy steps in the hallway took her out of her thoughts. The sound approached quickly, every step increasing her anxiety. Suddenly, the bedroom door opened violently, banging against the wall. Ethan appeared in the doorway, his expression a mix of fury and exhaustion. His eyes, reddened by worry and anger, immediately found Harper huddled on the bed like a cornered animal. He seemed bigger and more terrifying than before, and his physical resemblance to his father made him even more intimidating. In 3 long strides, Ethan reached Harper and grabbed her arm tightly, pulling her off the bed. "He was fine until you showed up," he yelled, his loud voice echoing in the room. He shook her as if she were a rag doll, his fingers squeezing the girl's arm with such force that she felt pain radiate through her body. "Please, let me go. I just want to know if he is okay," implored Harper, her words broken by sobs. Ethan, however, didn't seem to hear. His fury blinded him, transforming him into something uncontrollable. He dragged Harper down the luxurious hallway, ignoring her protests and the looks of the employees who averted their eyes in silence, unable to intervene. "You should never have entered this house. My father is sick, confused, and you took advantage of that," he roared, his voice cutting the air like a blade. When they reached the back door of the manor, Ethan opened it with a shove, allowing the cold wind and rain to invade the hallway. He pushed Harper outside, making her fall into the mud accumulating in the garden. The clean, soft clothes she wore were now dirty and soaked, sticking to her skin. The cold ground seemed to steal the little strength she had left. With difficulty, Harper managed to get up, her trembling legs barely supporting her weight. "Never come back here again. If I see you near this house or my father again, you will regret it," shouted Ethan, his voice competing with the thunder roaring in the background. He closed the door forcefully, leaving Harper alone in the relentless rain. Trembling and soaked, she hugged the locket against her chest, feeling as if she carried the weight of the world at that moment. It was then that a new sound cut the stormy night, the unmistakable wail of a siren approaching. Red and blue lights began to dance on the walls of Harrison Manor, reflecting in the puddles accumulating in the garden. Harper felt her heart shrink even more when she recognized the vehicle approaching quickly through the main gates. "No, please, no," she murmured to herself, watching helplessly as the ambulance lights illuminated the night like a sinister omen. Minutes later, the rain gave no truce while Harper staggered through the dark streets of the exclusive neighborhood. Every drop falling seemed to penetrate her already soaked skin, the clothes weighing like lead on her small body. Her legs shook with every step, but she forced herself to continue, eyes fixed on the uneven and wet ground. The red and blue lights of the ambulance had already disappeared into the darkness of the night. The memory of William's tired but kind expression oppressed her heart, as if an invisible knot prevented her from breathing. "I can't leave like this. I need to know if he will be okay. Please, God, don't let him die," she murmured, between chattering teeth, words coming out broken as her purple lips tried to stay firm. Her bare feet slipped on the pavement stones, the cold of the streets penetrating her bones like ice blades. Every step was a battle against the biting wind and the exhaustion threatening to consume her completely. The locket on her neck swung with every movement, pressing against her cold skin as a constant reminder of how little she had. The storm around her was relentless, but not greater than the storm inside her. "He treated me like no one else has treated me. He can't die. Not now," she repeated in her mind like a silent prayer resonating in every fiber of her being. After much walking, an old awning near the high walls of the manor offered a precarious shelter against the rain. Harper curled up against the cold wall, hugging her own knees and leaning on the rough surface. Her fingers were numb, Her wet hair stuck to her face, but she had no energy to move. From there, she could observe the mansion still lit on the upper floor, where lights seemed to tremble against the window glass. Occasionally shadows passed, but she couldn't identify who they were. Every movement inside the house made her heart race with hope, only to be followed by more despair when nothing changed. Her stomach roared loudly, reminding her of the chocolate eclairs that seemed to belong to another life. She hugged herself tighter, attempting to contain the cold and hunger, insisting on punishing her. A few hours ago, I was sitting at a real table eating real sweets. How can everything change so fast? She thought, feeling hot tears mix with the rain on her face. The contrast between the warmth she had felt before and the misery of the present made the emptiness in her chest seem even greater. The night dragged on with a slow cruelty. Every second seemed to last an eternity. Harper fought against sleep, determined to keep her eyes fixed on the doors of the manor. She desperately hoped to see the ambulance return or any other sign indicating William's condition. The wind dragged leaves and small branches moving through the streets, creating dancing shadows under the streetlights. These ghostly shapes seemed to play with her already exhausted mind, turning every noise and movement into a source of anxiety. They say after the storm comes the calm, but how many more storms must I face? She whispered to herself as her heavy eyes blinked slowly, trying to stay open. The fight against sleep was in vain. At some point in the early morning, tiredness won. Harper fell asleep sitting up, her back leaning against the cold wall and her knees hugged against her chest, seeking warmth. The cold of the ground seemed to merge with the exhaustion taking her body, making her dreams confused and restless. In this state of semi-consciousness, indistinct images passed through her mind. Chocolate eclairs turned into lockets, William's kind smiles changed to looks of contempt, and the mansion became a dark labyrinth from which she couldn't escape. "Please don't die. Don't leave me alone again. Please," she murmured in her agitated sleep, her almost frozen lips forming words the wind carried away. The first rays of morning sun found Harper still huddled under the awning. Her body ached in places she didn't even know could ache. The cold had settled in her bones, and every muscle seemed to protest as she tried to move. The rain had subsided to a fine drizzle, but the humidity in the air made her clothes cling uncomfortably to her skin. The morning mist covered the deserted streets, creating a heavy and silent atmosphere. Harper raised her eyes toward the mansion. The lights were off now, and absolute silence hovered over the house. "I need to find out where they took him. I need to know if he is okay," she thought as she forced herself to get up, although her heavy limbs screamed against the movement. Across the street, a newspaper vendor began organizing his stand. He stacked newspapers with quick and efficient movements, the sound of tearing paper cutting the silence of the morning. Harper watched, her mind still confused, until something caught her attention on the front page of the newspaper. In large letters, it read, "Real estate tycoon William Harrison hospitalized in grave condition after collapse." Her heart seemed to stop for a moment. Her eyes fixed on William's photo next to the headline, the serious face looking directly at the camera. She felt an oppression in her chest that took her breath away. Grave condition? No, it can't be true. He was so well yesterday morning, she murmured, as new tears threatened to fall. With hesitant steps, Harper approached the newsstand. Her bare feet made small noises against the wet ground, but she no longer noticed. The wet clothes clung to her body like a second skin, but the physical discomfort seemed insignificant now. Her eyes eagerly scanned every word of the headline, trying to absorb any information she could find about William. The newspaper vendor looked at her with suspicion, his eyes examining the girl with a mix of curiosity and caution, fearing she might steal something. But Harper ignored his gaze, her attention completely fixed on William's photo, which seemed to look directly at her as if imploring her help. In grave condition at the hospital. But which hospital? Why don't they say where they took him? She thought frantically, her fingers squeezing the locket with such force they began to hurt. The photograph and the printed words on the newspaper seemed larger than they were, almost consuming her entire field of vision. Her heart beat faster every second, as if trying to warn her of something imminent. Finally, a decision crystallized in her mind. It was as if a silent flame lit up inside her, illuminating a new determination. She needed to see him again. It didn't matter what happened. Even with the fear of Ethan still burning on her skin, Harper felt something stronger, an obligation not to abandon the man who had been kind to her when no one else was. William had treated her like a person, like someone who mattered, and she couldn't simply turn her back now. He was the only one who treated me like a person after so long. I can't abandon him now, not when he needs it most, she thought, feeling the weight of responsibility mix with determination. The morning sun now shone brighter, beginning to dry the puddles the storm had left behind. The sky was still partially cloudy, but there was a promise of improvement. Harper took a deep breath, straightening her shoulders as she pressed the locket against her chest. In that small piece of metal, she sought the strength needed to face whatever came. In her mind, the image of William's kind face in the bakery overlapped with the fear. With hesitant but decided steps, she began walking back toward the manor. No matter what Ethan does to me, I need to know if he is okay. I need to see him one more time, she murmured to herself as she headed toward the place that scared her so much but now seemed to be her only hope. It takes a rare kind of courage to walk back into the lion's den, doesn't it? You have to admire Harper's spirit. She is fighting for William when even his own family seems to have given up. But courage alone might not be enough to get past those iron gates again. Keep listening, because her street smarts are about to be put to the ultimate test. When she arrived at the mansion, the gate seemed even more imposing in the daylight. The wrought iron, with elegant but intimidating arabesques, shone under the morning sun like an insurmountable barrier for any intruder. Harper approached the guard booth shyly, her bare feet making little noise on the pavement. 2 guards stood watch, their serious and imperturbable expressions contrasting with the girl's nervousness. The black uniform impeccably aligned, and the shiny boots made Harper feel even more out of place. Her heart beat so loud it seemed to resonate in her ears as she tried to find the right words to explain her presence. Her fingers trembled slightly, holding the locket under her blouse as if it could give her courage. Breathing deeply, she finally addressed the guards. "Please, I just want to know how Mr. William is. I need to know which hospital they took him to," she said, her voice lower than she intended, almost drowned out by the distant noise of the city. One of the guards looked at her with disdain, recognizing the girl from the previous night's confusion. "Get out of here, girl. Haven't you caused enough trouble? Mr. Ethan left strict orders not to let anyone near, especially you," he replied roughly, waving his hand as if shooing away a fly. "But I just need to know." Harper tried to insist, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "I said get out, before I call the police," shouted the guard, taking a step forward menacingly. Harper backed away, terrified. Ethan's words from the night before echoed in her head, every memory of that moment reinforcing the fear. But something stronger than fear prevented her from leaving. There was something in her chest, a determination she could barely explain. "I can't give up, not now. There must be another way to get in," she thought, moving slowly away from the gates, her gaze fixed on the property while her mind worked on an alternative plan. Skirting the block, Harper began to observe the high walls of the mansion. Her eyes, trained by the difficulties of life on the streets, examined every detail. Years running from foster homes and seeking shelter in forbidden places had taught her to identify weak points in seemingly secure fences and walls. It was then that her eyes found an old tree whose robust branches extended over the back wall. The thick trunk marked by time seemed to invite her to climb. "If I managed to escape that juvenile center last year, this is a piece of cake. I just need to wait for the guards to get distracted," she murmured to herself while hiding behind a nearby bush and studying the patrol pattern of the security guards. She waited patiently, heart beating fast, while her eyes followed the movements of the men in the garden. The wind brought the smell of wet earth, and sounds of birds and insects filled the air. Finally, when the guards headed toward the other side of the property, Harper knew it was her chance. With quick and silent movements, she ran toward the tree, her bare feet gripping the rough bark of the trunk. The climb was an effort that demanded every ounce of her strength, but years of practice made her movements precise. The branches creaked softly under her weight, the sound making her heart skip a beat. She approached the top where the branches extended over the wall, her gaze fixed on the back gardens. From above, Harper had a partial view of the property. The employees moved through the garden, busy with their morning tasks. They looked small and distant. Further back, white sheets waving on the clothesline shone under the sun, almost blinding Harper as she tried to focus on the voices coming from the service area. She leaned carefully, her body tense from the effort of maintaining balance, Sweat ran down her forehead as she struggled to hear every word. Two maids were talking while hanging sheets, their voices carried by the wind. "Poor boss. The doctor said there is no cure. They took him to the medical center downtown, but it seems it's just a matter of time," said one of them, her voice low and full of sorrow. The words hit Harper like a punch in the stomach. Tears began to cloud her sight, making it even harder to keep balance on the branch. Her heart tightened with a pain that seemed impossible for someone so young. Virginia Commonwealth University Medical Center. Now I know where they took him. A flash of relief mixed with despair. She was already beginning to hatch a plan to get to the hospital when a sudden movement caught her attention. Ethan appeared through the back door, and even at a distance, Harper could see the exhaustion stamped on his face. Deep circles and hunched posture indicated a poorly slept night. He stopped in the middle of the garden, running his hands through his hair in a gesture of frustration. If only I had realized sooner that he was getting worse. If I hadn't let him leave the house yesterday, he murmured, his voice charged with guilt. The unexpected tone almost made Harper feel sorry for him. As she tried to move to leave, a branch broke under her weight. The sound, though small, was enough to attract Ethan's attention. His eyes, previously lost in thought, fixed immediately in the direction of the sound. He saw her for an instant. Harper froze, hoping he wouldn't recognize her, but the transformation on his face was instantaneous. Guilt and fatigue gave way to blind fury, his face reddening with anger. "It was you," he shouted, his voice reverberating through the garden. "You upset my father, and now he is like this. Guards, catch that beggar." Harper felt panic rise like a wave in her chest. Without thinking, she tried to back up, but her hasty movements only made the branch creak more. The scene below became even more chaotic. She watched the guards running toward her, their expressions as threatening as Ethan's. Her heart beat at full speed as she tried to decide whether to jump from the branch inside or outside the property. The height was terrifying, but the fear of being captured was even greater. "I need to get out of here. I need to find the hospital downtown before it's too late," she thought, mind working frantically while chaos unfolded beneath her. Ethan's furious scream resonated through the garden like thunder, causing Harper to almost lose her balance on the tree branch. Without time to think, she threw herself toward the other side of the wall, her fingers clinging to the vines covering the outer wall. The fall was higher than she had calculated, and her knees burned upon hitting the ground, but fear gave her strength to get up quickly. The sound of heavy steps and altered voices coming from the manor propelled her forward. "Run, fool, run like you've never run in your life," she ordered herself as her legs carried her away from Harrison Manor, toward the busy streets of the city where she knew she could easily blend in with the crowd. So the girl ran as if her life depended on it, toward the VCU Medical Center, which wasn't very far. Upon arriving, the hospital rose imposingly against the afternoon sky, its white walls reflecting the setting sun. Harper, hidden behind a column at the service entrance, watched the constant movement of employees and visitors. Her heart beat fast as she studied every detail, every possibility of entry. Her clothes were still dirty from the escape from the manor, but that could be an advantage. No one paid much attention to street kids. "I need to find a way in. If Ethan knows I'm here, he'll order them to kick me out. I need to see William one last time, even from afar," she thought, her attentive eyes catching every movement at the hospital entrances. The opportunity arose when a cleaning employee left his cart briefly to take a call. With agility acquired on the streets, Harper slipped behind the cart, becoming virtually invisible among cleaning products and cloths. The strong smell of disinfectant made her eyes sting, but she dared not move. Every time someone passed, she held her breath, her heart hammering so hard she feared they could hear it. "If he really is dying, I can't waste time. I have to find him before it's too late and thank him for his kindness," she murmured to herself as the cart moved through the hospital corridors. The labyrinth of white hallways seemed infinite, every turn bringing new challenges to stay hidden. Harper kept her ears tuned to every conversation, every mention of the name Harrison, while moving silently from one hiding place to another. It was then that she heard two nurses commenting on the millionaire in room 222, and her heart skipped a beat. Carefully, she followed the indicated direction, taking advantage of every shadow, every moment of distraction from the employees. "Second floor. No, I need to get to the 5th floor without being seen," she repeated to herself like a mantra as she snuck toward the service stairs. The hallway on the 5th floor was quieter, more imposing. The light beige walls and waxed floor reflected the fluorescent light, creating an almost surreal environment. Harper could feel the tension in the air, the discreet coming and going of doctors and nurses, all with worried expressions. Hidden behind a screen, she watched the movement in front of room 222. Her heart was beating faster and faster. It was then that she heard it, a weak voice, almost a whisper, coming from the room. "Emily, my daughter, forgive me for not protecting you. Your baby." William's voice, broken and delirious, pierced through the ajar door. The world seemed to stop for a moment. Emily. The name hit Harper like a lightning bolt. Her hands trembled as she took the locket from her neck, opening it once more to look at her mother's photo. Emily, her mother, the same one who had died so many years ago, leaving her alone in the world when she was born. The pieces began to fit in her mind like a cruel puzzle. It can't be. Could it be that? Could it be that he is? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of steps moving away from the room. With her heart hammering against her chest, Harper took advantage of the moment the hallway became empty to sneak inside room 222. The environment was plunged into a soft penumbra, broken only by the glow of the monitors surrounding the bed. William lay motionless, tubes and cables connected to his fragile body, his breathing a mechanical whisper in the silence of the room. His hands, previously so firm holding the cane, now rested inert on the white sheets. How different he looks now. So fragile, so human, thought Harper, approaching the bed slowly. The sound of the devices marked every second like a relentless clock as Harper gathered the courage to pronounce the word that now burned in her throat. Her small hands squeezed the locket with such force that her knuckles were white. The smell of hospital, medicine, and imminent death turned her stomach, but she kept approaching. With a trembling voice, she finally whispered, "Grandpa." The word came out like a prayer charged with hope and fear. "You said your daughter's name was Emily. It's the same name as my mother. You said, we look alike. Are you my grandfather?" asked the girl with intense emotion on her face. William's eyes opened slowly as if waking from a deep sleep. For a moment, they seemed unfocused, lost, but then found Harper's face. Something changed in his expression, recognition, understanding, years of regret reflected in a single look. His dry lips moved with difficulty, forming words that came out like a breath. You are her daughter. The fault is mine." The moment of connection was interrupted by the frantic sound of monitors, their beeps turning into a sharp and insistent alarm. The room door opened violently, doctors and nurses bursting into the space with the urgency of those fighting against time. Orders were shouted, equipment moved, and amidst the chaos, Harper felt strong hands grabbing her arms, dragging her away from the bed. She struggled, trying to break free, eyes fixed on William's motionless figure. The world seemed to spin in slow motion as she was dragged out of the room, every second an eternity of agony. "No, please, let me stay. He might be my grandfather," she screamed, her voice getting lost in the tumult. The white and sterile hallways of the hospital now seemed like a blur as Harper was taken away from room 222. Her tears ran freely, clouding her vision, but she couldn't stop fighting against those holding her. The sound of the devices still echoed in her ears, mixing with the murmur of worried voices and hurried steps. All the weight of the discovery, all the cruel irony of fate seemed to crush her chest. "Grandpa, don't die. I just found you." Her desperate scream resonated through the hospital hallways, carrying all the despair of a child who was once again about to lose her family. The chaos in room 202 continued, visible through the closing door. The last image Harper had of her grandfather was his fragile body, surrounded by professionals in blue uniforms, fighting to keep him alive. The locket on her neck seemed to weigh a ton, her mother's photo now a silent testament to a family history she was barely beginning to discover. "Please, God, don't let him leave now. Not when I finally found my family," she whispered between sobs while being taken away from the only family link she had left. In the hospital monitoring room, the environment was wrapped in a tense silence, broken only by the rhythmic sound of the machines keeping William Harrison alive. Graphs danced on the screens in continuous movement, displaying the patient's vital signs. Every second, every heartbeat, every oscillation in blood pressure was recorded, creating a line of data telling the story of the last critical hours. One of the doctors, eyes fixed on the main screen, frowned upon noticing an intriguing irregularity. He adjusted the monitor controls, zooming in on a specific section. "Something here doesn't make sense," he murmured to himself, his voice charged with curiosity. The other doctors in the room, until then focused on their own work, began to approach. "What did you find?" asked a young resident, while crossing her arms and tilting her head to examine the screen. The doctor pointed to a specific point on the graphs. "Note this," he said, his tone now more emphatic. "The vital signs are unstable, but look how they stabilize suddenly at this moment." He marked the time on the monitor with the cursor, highlighting the change in blood pressure and heartbeat patterns. It was a clear turning point where chaos gave way to order, as if William's body were responding to an external stimulus. "Did this happen by chance, or was it caused by something?" asked another doctor, leaning over the colleague's shoulder to analyze the data. The room was taken by murmurs while everyone tried to find a logical explanation for what they were seeing. One of the doctors, determined to discover the origin of the change, accessed the hospital security logs. He extracted the recordings from the hallway cameras leading to William's room, synchronizing them with the timestamps of the data. Being a high-tech hospital, all critical patients were monitored in their rooms to receive the best care. When the videos began to play, the room went silent again. The images were clear. There was Harper, the small figure who had managed to enter William's room. The recording showed her entering hesitantly, almost furtively, but her presence in the room seemed to coincide exactly with the moments when William's vital signs stabilized. "This can't be a coincidence," commented the doctor who had found the anomaly, his voice holding a tone of restrained admiration. "Look how the data changes as soon as she approaches. It is as if his organism reacted immediately to her presence, lowering blood pressure." The girl calms him. Another more experienced doctor crossed his arms while watching the recordings. "What happens when she takes his hand?" he asked, adjusting his glasses. The answer came in another sequence of graphs. The previously accelerated heartbeat slowed to an almost normal rhythm. The blood pressure that oscillated dangerously stabilized. "It's impressive. Yes. When she is by his side, it's as if his body knows she is there," he commented, his words charged with amazement. The doctors began to review every detail, rewinding and fast-forwarding the recordings, crossing data and logs. Every new discovery reinforced the picture being drawn. Harper's presence seemed to act as a natural stabilizer for William's weakened organism. The moment the girl whispered, "Grandpa," was particularly significant. On the corresponding graph, the changes were even more dramatic. "This goes beyond what we understand as medicine," commented one of the doctors, his voice barely containing the emotion. "It's as if the emotional bond between them is literally sustaining his life." Sometimes, science hits a wall that only the heart can break through. It is fascinating to see how Harper's presence defies all medical logic. But knowing the truth and acting on it are two different things. Will the doctors take the risk? The answer lies in the tense minutes ahead. The meeting room was quickly convened, and the data presented in detail. Graphs, tables, and images from the monitor recordings filled the projection screen while the doctors tried to process what they were seeing. The chief neurosurgeon, a man of hard expression and controlled gestures, watched everything with increasing attention. He said nothing, but the furrowing of his brows revealed the intense thought process he was immersed in. "If these data are correct," began one of the doctors, "this means the surgery we considered impossible might have a much greater chance of success. The emotional bond might be reducing his stress levels, stabilizing vital signs," added another doctor, pointing to the graphs. "But the time window is small. We need to act while he is responding positively. If his pressure stabilizes like this, that can help us operate on the aneurysm. It's risky, but it's the only chance he has." The words floated in the air, charged with urgency. Everyone knew they were facing a unique opportunity, but also an immense risk. The doctors began to discuss the logistics of the operation, each contributing their specialty. Voices rose as ideas were shared, refined, and challenged. The images from the monitors continued playing on the screen, a constant reminder of the limited time they had. One of the most experienced doctors, with grey hair and a firm voice, pointed to a sequence of data. "This cannot be ignored," he said, referring to the moment Harper called William Grandpa. His vital signs improved by nearly 50%. It's as if she were a living medicine, something science cannot explain, but is happening before our eyes. As the medical team prepared for surgery, an important question arose. Should Harper remain by William's side during the procedure? If she leaves the room, signs may oscillate again. We need the girl to stay close to him, argued one of the younger doctors. We need her here, even if only until anesthesia is administered. The idea caused discomfort in some team members, but most seemed to agree there was no other option. We need stability. And right now, she is the source of that stability, affirmed the chief neurosurgeon, finally breaking his silence. Nurses were quickly instructed to prepare the surgical center. Tension was palpable as professionals worked at an accelerated pace, aware that every second counted. Harper's presence in the hospital, previously seen as a curiosity or nuisance, was now treated as essential. The girl was at the center of everything, without knowing it. "We need to operate now while he is stable," declared the most experienced doctor, getting up from his chair with renewed determination. His words resonated in the room, charged with urgency. The other doctors nodded, but the chief neurosurgeon remained in his place, fingers tapping on the meeting table in a gesture of indecision. He knew the weight of the decision rested on his shoulders. Years of experience had taught him that in situations like this, it was necessary to act fast but with caution. "If something goes wrong during surgery," he began, voice charged with concern. He looked at the monitor images again, graphs pulsing like a constant reminder of what was at stake. The bond between William and Harper, newly discovered and already so powerful, seemed like one of those inexplicable forces of nature, defying medical logic. But at the same time, it was impossible to ignore the risks. We are trusting something we don't fully understand. What if we lose stability during the procedure? The concern in his voice was shared by everyone in the room, but even with uncertainties, one thing was clear. That was the only chance to save William. "It's our only chance. We have to try," murmured one of the younger doctors, expressing what everyone was thinking. The chief neurosurgeon sighed, his mind still weighing the pros and cons. Finally, he stood up, his rigid posture reflecting the gravity of the decision. "Prepare everything. Call the girl back. This girl is this man's chance," he said firmly, despite the shadow of doubt still looming in his gaze. The doctors found Harper huddled in a chair in the hospital waiting room, still trembling after having been kicked out of William's room. Her expression changed from fear to surprise when they, instead of kicking her out, sat next to her with kind expressions. The oldest of them, with grey hair and tired eyes, leaned toward her. "Little one, we discovered something extraordinary. Every time you are close to Mr. Harrison, his vital signs improve significantly. It is as if your presence brings him back," he explained, showing her some charts he carried. The girl stared at the papers in her hands, trying to understand those complicated lines and numbers. Her heart raced with the possibility of being able to be close to him again, of having a chance to discover if her suspicions of being his granddaughter were true. The doctors continued, explaining how they would need her by William's side until the moment of surgery, how her presence could be crucial for his survival. "Can you do that, little one? Can you stay by his side until the last moment before the operation?" asked the doctor, voice charged with hope. Harper nodded vigorously, wiping tears with the back of her dirty hands. "Of course, if he needs me, I will stay by his side," replied the girl. A younger nurse approached with clean clothes and a towel, suggesting she take a quick shower before entering the room. While preparing, the girl couldn't stop thinking about the locket hidden in her pocket, about her mother's photo that looked so much like William's features. "What if he really is my grandfather? What if this is my only chance to have a real family?" she murmured to her reflection in the bathroom mirror while trying to tame her rebellious hair with her fingers. Now clean and in new clothes, Harper was led back to the hospital room. The sound of the devices was terrifying, but she forced herself to remain firm as she approached the bed. William seemed even paler and more fragile than before, connected to various tubes and cables. With care, as if he were made of porcelain, she took his hand. The effect was immediate. The monitors began to show significant improvement in vital signs. "I'm here, Grandpa. I won't leave your side," she whispered, squeezing his hand lightly while doctors watched, marveled at the transformation in the machines. Minutes turned into hours as Harper maintained her vigil beside William. With every change in the monitors, with every sigh from him, her heart skipped a beat. Doctors entered and left the room constantly. checking devices and taking notes, always with surprised expressions, seeing the stability of vital signs. Occasionally she hummed quietly songs that seemed pretty to her, watching how his face seemed to relax at the sound of her voice. The afternoon advanced when movement in the room increased. It was time to prepare William for surgery. Harper felt fear grow in her chest while watching preparations, but stood firm in her post, holding his hand as if it were an anchor. Doctors explained they would need to take him to the surgical center and that she could accompany him to the door. Her throat tightened at the idea of having to let go of that hand, of letting him go without knowing if he would return. "Sir, you have to come back. Are you listening to me? There are so many things I need to ask. So many things I need to know," she murmured, leaning closer to him. It was at this moment that the room door opened abruptly, revealing Ethan with bloodshot eyes and heavy breathing. Seeing Harper sitting beside his father, his face contorted into a mask of fury. "You again? How many times will I have to kick you out?" he yelled, advancing toward the girl. Harper shrank in the chair but didn't let go of William's hand, even as her unknown uncle approached threateningly. An older nurse placed herself between them, her posture firm as a wall. "Mr. Ethan, look at the monitors," she ordered, pointing to the screens. "Since this girl entered the room, your father's pressure normalized. Heartbeats are regular. It's the first time in days we achieved such stability. She is the only thing keeping your father alive right now." Ethan stopped mid-movement, his eyes moving from the monitors to the girl, then to his father, confusion evident on his face. Tears began to slide down Ethan's face as the information sank in. His body, previously rigid with anger, seemed to undo itself, and he leaned on the nearest wall to keep from falling. Harper watched the transformation in silence, still firmly holding William's hand. How is this possible?" murmured Ethan, voice charged with emotion and exhaustion. "Mr. Ethan, in a few minutes we will begin surgery," announced the doctor entering the room. "We are going to take advantage of this moment of stability her presence provided and try to operate on him. His chances were 0, but now we have a small and short opportunity." Ethan only nodded, unable to form words, watching as his father seemed more serene beside that little stranger. Harper stood up slowly when nurses began preparing the gurney to transport William, but kept her hand firmly intertwined with his during the entire journey to the surgical center. In the hallway leading to the surgery room, Harper finally had to let go of William's hand. Her tears fell in silence as she watched the medical team take the gurney inside. Ethan remained a few steps behind, his face a mask of worry and confusion. "Please, let him come back," whispered Harper to herself, squeezing the locket hidden in her pocket, that small object keeping so many secrets, yet unrevealed. Minutes dragged like hours in the silent hallway. Harper settled on the floor, leaning on the cold wall, eyes fixed on the surgical center door. Ethan paced back and forth, heavy steps resonating through the empty corridor. Occasionally he cast curious glances at the girl, as if trying to decipher the mystery of her connection with his father. "How can a stranger have so much power over his vital signs?" he murmured to himself, running hands through his hair in a nervous gesture. The clock on the wall marked every second with cruel slowness. Nurses entered and left the surgery room, faces unreadable behind surgical masks. Every time the door opened, Harper held her breath, waiting for news. The locket in her pocket seemed to weigh a ton, holding secrets that could change everything. "God, Father, give me strength. I need him to live. Please, use me if necessary, but make him get better. Please, I beg you," she whispered in prayer. However, after some surgery time, suddenly a commotion began inside the operating room. Monitors fired deafening alarms, and altered voices shouted urgent orders. "We are losing him," shouted one of the doctors. Harper, watching everything intently, felt her heart stop hearing that scream. Without thinking twice, taking advantage of the confusion while doctors ran after equipment, she slipped inside the surgery room with her street kid cunning and entered without anyone being able to stop her. The air in the surgery room was freezing and charged with tension. Harper moved like a shadow among busy doctors, bare feet silent on the cold floor. The sound of monitors was deafening, but she could only focus on William's pale face on the surgery table. The heart monitor showed a straight line, its continuous beep announcing his heart had stopped. The little intruder felt her own heart freeze at that sight. "No, it can't end like this. He is dying. That line should be moving." His heart stopped, she thought desperately. With agility learned on the streets, Harper snuck past a distracted nurse and reached the surgery table. The bright lights of the surgical center made the tears in her eyes shine like diamonds as she watched William's serene face. All noise around seemed to have disappeared. The doctor's shouts, the sound of devices, everything reduced to a deafening silence. From somewhere deep in her heart emerged a scream charged with all the love and despair a child can feel. "Grandpa, don't leave me alone like you left her," she shouted, her voice breaking through the veil between life and death. In the darkness that was consuming him, William heard it. It wasn't just a scream, it was a second chance. He stood at the precipice of eternity, ready to let go, but that single word, "Grandpa," became an anchor. It was the title he had denied himself for decades. "I cannot fail her too," his soul screamed against the void. "I cannot die a coward." With a will fueled by 20 years of penance, he clawed his way back to the light. Then, a weak beep sounded on the heart monitor, then another, and another, until establishing a constant and strong rhythm. Doctors stopped their frantic actions, watching stunned as William's vital signs stabilized inexplicably. A voice, calling out from the edge of the abyss. It is a moment that truly shakes your beliefs, doesn't it? It reminds us that the will to live is often tied to the ones we love. But the surgery isn't the only battle left to fight. A 20-year-old secret still needs to be spoken aloud. Absolute silence took over the room, while all eyes turned to the small figure beside the surgery table. The girl who had just performed what seemed to be a miracle. The surgeon left the operating room, still with the surgical mask on his face, hands trembling slightly as he pushed the door. His look revealed a mix of amazement and admiration, something rare for a man who had dedicated 30 years of his life to medicine. The hospital hallway, previously silent, seemed to breathe in unison with the tension of those present. Nurses and doctors passing by slowed their steps, eyes following the surgeon as he approached Ethan and Harper. Even the sounds of machines and footsteps seemed to diminish, as if the entire hospital were waiting for what he had to say. The surgeon stopped in front of the two, face partially covered by the mask, but the intensity in his eyes revealed it all. He gestured, seeking the right words, as if what he had just witnessed was difficult to translate into scientific terms. "In all my years of profession," he began, removing the mask slowly, revealing a face marked by tiredness, "I never saw anything like it." His voice was low, almost a whisper, but carried a weight that made everyone around hold their breath. Other team doctors began gathering around him, each with an equally perplexed expression. One of them still held the tablet with vital sign charts, as if needing to verify again what had just happened. The machines failed. His heart stopped completely. "We tried all standard procedures. It was as if nothing worked," began one of them, voice trembling slightly. He wiped sweat from his forehead. But then, something extraordinary happened. The surgeon nodded, confirming. "We were distracted and focused on the surgery. The girl managed to invade the surgical center and saw we were about to lose the patient. Amidst panic, she screamed, and it was." "As if her voice brought him back," he said, pointing to Harper with a slight nod. His expression was still of amazement, as if even he barely believed the words he was saying. The moment she screamed, his heart simply started beating again, as if responding to her call. His voice carried a reverence, making every word resonate in the hallway. Ethan, who until then maintained a rigid posture, collapsed. Legs already weakened by hours of anguish gave way under his weight. He fell to his knees on the cold floor, eyes fixed on Harper while the doctor's words resonated in his mind. It was as if every judgment, every certainty he had was undoing before his eyes. The girl he had treated with contempt, whom he had kicked out of his house, had just saved his father's life in a way not even the most advanced medicine could explain. How could I be so blind? How did I not realize before? He thought, while tears began rolling down his face, shoulders shaking, burdened by the weight of regret. He looked at Harper, standing there, eyes wide open, visibly frightened by everything happening. "Forgive me," whispered Ethan, voice almost inaudible but charged with emotion. "Forgive me for everything." Harper hesitated, cautious gaze studying the man kneeling before her. His eyes, so similar to the woman's in her necklace, met hers. He sought something in her expression, maybe sincerity, maybe genuine regret. During those seconds of silence, Everything around seemed to disappear. She could hear the muffled sound of her own heart, Ethan's broken breathing, and felt the weight of the locket in her pocket. It was as if the object were pulsing, almost calling her to act. "I just wanted to help," murmured Harper, voice almost childish in contrast to the weight of the moment. "I just wanted him to be okay." The words came out with difficulty, as if each carried a piece of the pain accumulated in recent days. Ethan couldn't contain the sobs. He extended trembling arms and pulled Harper into a desperate hug. Tears running down his face wet the girl's hair while he repeated requests for forgiveness like a prayer. "Forgive me for everything, for not seeing who you were, for not welcoming you sooner. You saved my father. You brought him back when no one else could." His words were broken by sobs, but each carried a truth he now recognized with clarity. Harper, initially tense, began to relax in Ethan's hug. She could feel the sincerity in his voice, the urgency in his gesture. During what seemed like an eternity, neither moved. It was as if all the weight of the past had disappeared, replaced by something new, something neither knew how to define yet. The hospital hallway was in absolute silence, the medical team watching the scene with respect. It was a rare moment, a moment when science seemed to meet something bigger, something intangible. Fluorescent lights bathed the hallway with a glow appearing softer than usual, as if the environment itself recognized the importance of that moment. One doctor murmured to his colleague, "It's incredible how things can change in so little time." Ethan finally pulled back slightly, holding Harper's shoulders to look in her eyes. He wiped his face with his coat sleeve, but eyes were still red and moist. "You saved my father's life, and I treated you so badly," he murmured, voice impregnated with guilt and gratitude. Before Harper could answer, the moment was interrupted by the sound of the surgical center door opening again. The soft click was followed by the echo of hurried steps of a doctor approaching the group. His face is still covered by the surgical mask, but eyes transmitting urgency. The atmosphere in the hallway changed instantly. The emotion of the moment gave way to attention. The doctor stopped in front of them, rigid posture indicating news was important. "Surgery hasn't finished," he said with a grave, firm voice. He looked directly at Harper, ignoring Ethan and others around. "We need you to stay here in case something happens, Harper." The words seemed to cut the air like a blade. The gravity of the situation is evident in every syllable. Ethan let go of the girl reluctantly, eyes meeting hers in a silent request. It was as if he wanted to transmit all the strength he had, all the faith he now placed in her. The bond they had just formed seemed fragile but at the same time unbreakable. Harper straightened her shoulders, determination shining in her gaze. Her small body shook slightly, but there was a strength in her posture appearing greater than herself. "I will bring him back as many times as necessary," declared with a firm voice, despite trembling hands. She looked at Ethan one last time before turning to follow the doctor back to the operating room. After the surgery, which went perfectly well considering William's grave condition, the hospital ICU plunged into heavy silence during dawn, broken only by the constant beep of monitors and soft sound of respirators. Cold, bluish light from machines illuminated white walls, projecting elongated, disturbing shadows. William Harrison rested in one of the beds, body connected to various tubes and devices, keeping his life by a thread. Surgery had been long and delicate, every minute a battle between life and death, leaving the entire medical team exhausted. The businessman's face, formerly expressive and imposing, now seemed devoid of any strength, partially covered by the breathing tube dominating the scene. "It was a success, but the next hours will be crucial," the surgeon had said to the team and family, words resonating like a sentence of uncertainty. No one there dared question. In the hallway, Ethan paced back and forth, steps echoing in an anxious rhythm, while Harper remained seated on a nearby bench, hands joined over the locket on her neck. But the girl couldn't stay there. Restlessness and fear ate her inside. She didn't want to, couldn't stay away from William at that moment. Without anyone noticing, Harper slipped through the ICU hallways like a small shadow. Her bare feet barely made noise against the cold floor, and her slight figure was almost confused with light reflections from machines. Passing half-open doors, she listened to muffled voices of doctors and nurses, whispers exchanged, charged with worry. Hidden behind a screen, she watched the frantic and focused movement. Her heart tightened with every word she caught. It was then she heard something freezing her blood. He was operated on. The surgery went well, but his condition is so complex he might not make it through the night, murmured a doctor to his colleague. Voice grave, almost resigned, as if already accepting the worst. Harper froze in place, the sound of that sentence reverberating in her mind like an untamable echo. Legs wobbled, and she had to lean on the wall to avoid falling. Vision seemed to darken for an instant, but still, she forced herself to move. The girl waited until doctors moved away, heart beating so loud she feared being heard. With quick, silent steps, she slipped into William's room. The environment seemed colder and heavier than outside hallways, as if death's presence lurked among shadows. The smell of medicine and antiseptics was almost suffocating, and the constant sound of respirators created a rhythm seeming to count seconds. Harper hesitated a moment by the door, eyes fixed on the man lying in bed. Bluish light from monitors cast shadows on his pale face, highlighting wrinkles previously bursting with vigor. Tubes and cables leaving his body seemed fragile and intricate, like spiderwebs keeping him suspended between life and death. "I'm not going to let you leave. Not now that we finally met," whispered Harper with an almost inaudible voice, fearing to disturb that delicate balance. Approaching slowly, the girl felt responsibility fall on her shoulders. It was as if every step was harder than the last, but she knew she had to try. With care, she slid her small hand between cables and tubes until finding William's cold hand. His fingers were inert, but Harper squeezed them, seeking to transmit some warmth, some sign of life. It was a simple gesture, but for her, it meant everything. "You have to fight. You have to stay here with me," murmured, with a broken voice while silent tears began falling. Feeling throat-tight, Harper did what she knew to do in the most desperate moments. She began to pray. "Our Father, who art in heaven," whispered words coming out trembling but full of faith she didn't even know she still had. Prayer flowed from her lips, mix of ancient words and pleas coming directly from the heart. Teary eyes alternated between William's face and monitors recording every heartbeat. The locket on neck seemed heavier than ever. It was as if her mother's photo kept there was watching, as a reminder of everything she lost and everything she could lose again. "Hail Mary, full of grace," continued, voice becoming firmer while squeezing William's hand, as if wanting to retain life with her own strength. Tears now fell freely on white sheets, mixing with glow of monitor lights. Kneeling beside bed, Harper didn't stop. Every word was a plea, every tear a desperate attempt to reach something bigger. "Lord, don't take him now. I've already lost so many people. Give me a chance to know my family, to have someone who loves me, a place to call home," implored, voice broken by sobs. It was as if she were alone in a world where everything depended on that moment, that connection maintained with the man before her. Clock on wall marked 2 a.m. when something changed. At first, almost imperceptible, a small deviation in heart monitor beat pattern. Harper, absorbed in prayers, didn't notice immediately. But slowly, sound became stronger, more regular. Numbers on monitor began stabilizing, graphs now showing more constant rhythm. It was as if beat by beat, something was bringing William back. When Harper finally raised eyes, she noticed changes. Monitors previously so threatening now seemed calmer. Her heart accelerated, noticing vital signs strengthening. It was as if every whispered word, every shed tear had reached William's heart, awakening invisible strength in him. She squeezed his hand more firmly, feeling slight warmth previously absent. "Please, keep fighting. I'm here with you," whispered Harper, voice charged with emotion. Girl's eyes shining with mix of tears and hope, fixed on monitors. It was a silent miracle, proof that something beyond comprehensible was acting in that room. And although unable to explain it, Harper knew she wasn't alone in that fight. Next day, first rays of sun invaded the ICU, illuminating a gently white and silent environment. Harper, still kneeling beside William's bed, kept a small hand intertwined with his. Despite hours of vigil, eyes opened slightly, perceiving movement of businessman's fingers. She blinked several times, trying to confirm it wasn't a dream. "He's alive. He's here with me," thought, feeling heart accelerate. Doctors entered the room with quick, coordinated steps. One of them, verifying monitors, let out choked exclamations. "It's incredible. Not only survived the night, but vital signs are strengthening," declared, adjusting glasses while watching graphs. Another doctor, already familiar with the situation, approached the bed to evaluate reflexes. "Mr. Harrison, "Can you hear us?" asked, voice calm and encouraging but charged with expectation. Harper squeezed William's hand tighter, gaze fixed on pale face, waiting anxiously for any sign of response. It was then William opened eyes slowly, like someone waking from a long sleep. Blinked several times, adjusting to clarity, flooding the room until eyes met Harper's. A slight smile began forming on lips, even with evident weakness. It is moments like this that truly make you believe in miracles, isn't it? Against every medical prediction, a little girl's faith pulled him back from the edge. But don't dry your tears just yet, because William is about to speak, and his first words will finally unlock the heartbreaking mystery of the locket. "He's back. He's with me," whispered the girl, feeling tears of relief slide down face. Doctors, after a brief exchange of looks, decided it was safe to remove the breathing tube. "He is breathing on his own. Strong and stable vital signs," announced one while the team began the procedure with extreme caution. Harper watched everything with fists clenched over locket on neck, heart still racing. When tube removed, William coughed slightly before breathing deeply for first time in hours. Eyes now more lucid turned to Harper, who still looked at him with hope and admiration. Hoarse and weak voice resonated in room with emotional intensity, making everyone present hold breath. "I dreamed of Emily. She told me you are the miracle she left," said he. Room went absolute silence. Harper opened eyes wide, chest oppressed by strength of those words. "Emily? You dreamed of my mom?" murmured, barely believing what she heard. Leaned closer, heart beating with mix of fear and expectation. William closed eyes for a moment, gathering strength before continuing. "Yes, little one. Your mother," said with difficulty. Words were like lightning for Harper, holding locket against chest as if shield. "My mother was Emily. I read it in locket," replied Harper, voice coming out in choked whisper. "But I never knew anything about her. All I have is this locket with her name written, but I know she was my mother because she looks a lot like me." She opened small object, revealing worn photo of smiling young woman. William gazed at the image, a weak nod confirming what he had glimpsed at the manor before darkness took him. "I saw it. Back at the house," he whispered, his voice trembling. "It's her. It's my Emily. You really are my granddaughter," he affirmed, his voice broken by emotion. Harper didn't know how to react. Part of her wanted to scream, another wanted to cry. But moment was so surreal, all she managed to do was squeeze his hand tighter. "Are you my grandfather?" asked voice full of hope and fear. William nodded, tears now rolling freely down face. "My little one, I've looked for you for so many years," confessed William, voice charged with emotion. "I failed your mother, and consequently you. I will tell you everything because you deserve to know truth." Paused, breathing deeply, while eyes fixed on Harper's, difficult facing past, but knew needed to do it. William began speaking, voice broken but determined. "Emily, my daughter, was young, full of life and hope, but also stubborn like her father," said, trying to smile, but pain of memory returned bitter gesture. "When she told me she was pregnant in late teens, everything collapsed for me. I was rigid man, focused on reputation and family legacy. Couldn't see beyond pride and conventions. I followed blindly." Paused, trying to control tears. Harper listened every word attentively, heart tight by weight of revelation. William continued. "I yelled at her, said terrible things, things a father should never say, called child's father irresponsible, and blamed her for everything. She cried, trying to make me understand, but I refused to listen. Then, one night, she simply left. Didn't say where going, left no note, just disappeared." Harper blinked, processing information while squeezing locket against chest. "She left and you couldn't find her?" asked voice trembling. "I tried, my little one, searched everywhere, hired investigators, followed false leads, but she seemed to have disappeared from map. Years later, discovered she had gone to live with child's father, trying to build life far from me," explained, voice charged with regret. "They lived in common city, far from luxury and demands I imposed. Emily was determined to raise her family without depending on me." Harper swallowed. "So, was she happy?" asked with mix of hope and sadness. William shook head slowly. "I believe so, but never had chance to hear it from her. When I finally managed to track down where she was, it was too late. A terrible accident had occurred. The car carrying her and your father was involved in a massive collision. They both died instantly. And you, my granddaughter, were so small that no one knew you were in the car until long after." Harper's eyes opened, hands began trembling. I was there?" asked voice almost inaudible. William nodded, guilt, overflowing expression. "You were there, but too small to understand. When accident happened, you fled scene scared and helpless. Rescue teams couldn't find you. It was as if you disappeared along with them." Harper squeezed Lockett hard. "I don't remember that. Only know a man found me on street lost when very small, took me home and cared for me some years, but never knew what really happened. Only knew Mom's name because on brooch. Tried searching, but only knew first name. Told." Voice broken by memory. "The man who cared for me was kind, but after he died, his children kicked me out. Since then, I've been living on the streets, trying to survive on my own." Harper's words hit William like punch in stomach. Closed eyes, moment trying absorb pain, knowing granddaughter, so small and innocent, faced so much suffering. "All this happened because of my fault. If behaved differently with mother, if accepted love for you and father, maybe none of this happened," said voice failing, while tears ran down face. Harper looked at him, own eyes full of tears. "Never knew what was to have family. And now you are my grandfather?" asked, still struggling to understand magnitude of revelation. William nodded, extending trembling hand, touching Harper's face with tenderness. "I am. And Emily, your mother, was everything to me, even when didn't know how to show it. She left you as greatest gift someone could give me. You are miracle she left." Harper couldn't contain tears. Pain, longing, need belonging overflowed chest. Held William's hand tight, fearing disappear again. "I just wanted to have family, someone who really loved me," confessed, sobbing. William pulled her into hug, ignoring weakness in arms. "My little one, now you have family and promise never leave you alone again. You are my granddaughter, my second chance, and never fail you again," declared voice firm, despite tears still falling. Finally, the truth finds its way home. It is hard not to get emotional seeing two lonely souls realize they belong to each other. But how will Ethan react to this new reality? The healing of the Harrison family has just begun, and you won't want to miss their beautiful new beginning. Two remained thus, united by connection, time and suffering, tested but not destroyed. Minutes later, Ethan joined them in hug. ICU room, usually cold and impersonal, seemed carry warmth of home starting form. For Harper, first time in years, there was hope. And for William, new reason to live. For Ethan, even bigger family. 3 months later, familiar chocolate aroma filled bakery air, small refuge amidst hurried city movement. Polished wooden tables reflected soft light, entering ample windows, creating cozy atmosphere. In establishment corner, same bench where all began, William Harrison and Harper sat laughing quietly, sharing chocolate eclair. The serene expression on the businessman's face and the shine in the girl's eyes told a story of reconciliation and hope. The millionaire recovered completely from illness, thanks to the love of granddaughter, doctors, and dear son. Every day seemed like a great opportunity and adventure for him. Gratitude of one gaining a chance to start over. "You still eat this as if it were the greatest treasure in the world," commented William, watching granddaughter bite delicately sweet, but with enthusiasm making heart warm. He himself held other half of chocolate eclair, appearing more special now shared. "You know," continued with nostalgic smile, "your mother always asked for same chocolate eclair. She said best sweet in universe. Really very alike." Harper looked with mix of pride and curiosity. "Was she like me?" asked, eyes fixed on grandfather's face. Still so much wanted know about Emily, much desired understand. William nodded, tenderness evident in gaze. "Very. Stubborn, determined. But had heart sweet as this chocolate," said, touching lightly, sweet still holding. "And always said, sweets form, celebrate life, even in hardest moments." Harper smiled, feeling comforting warmth in chest. "So think runs in family," joked, licking chocolate dirty finger, letting out shy laugh. Bakery door opening sound caught both attention. Ethan entered carrying document folder one hand, smile on face. Since hospital incident changed significantly. Rigid posture and tension traits replaced by lightness Harper never saw before. Approached, placing papers on table carefully. "Bring good news," announced, looking William then Harper. DNA results confirmed what already knew. Harper is officially a Harrison. Opened folder, showing document legally officializing Harper's relationship as William's granddaughter and Ethan's niece. Now official, part of family on paper, in blood, and in heart. Harper looked papers, eyes wide, words dancing in mind, trying to absorb meaning. "Means really have family now?" asked, almost disbelieving. "Yes, my little one," replied William, voice charged emotion, placing hand over hers. "Always had. Just now nothing can separate us. You are a Harrison in every possible way." Harper's eyes shone and contained tears, throwing the self-arms of grandfather, squeezing with all strength. Small body. "Thank you. Thank you for not giving up on me," whispered words muffled against William's jacket. "Ah, my little one," said William, hugging tenderly. "We are the ones who never gave up on life, even when it seemed lost." Ethan, watching the scene, wiped eyes discreetly before pulling the chair. "Well, I think it deserves celebration," said the signaling waitress. "More chocolate eclairs for everyone. Today is a special day." Three laughed, lightness in the air palpable. When sweets arrived, Harper smiled, realizing for the first time surrounded people loved genuinely. No longer distant dream, new reality. While nibbling another chocolate eclair, William and Ethan feeling a complete way never imagined possible. "Sometimes I need to lose sweets to gain the whole family," joked William, breaking silence. Voice gentle, full wisdom, reminding the girl stole sweets. Hugged. Harper, tight gesture, speaking more thousand words. Harper laughed, drying tears running face. "Think that chocolate eclair is worth the effort," replied, resting head on grandfather's shoulder. The sound of laughter resonated in the bakery's enveloping environment, an aura of joy contrasting tumult and pain faced months before. Sunlight filtered through the large windows, bathing scene, golden glow, almost silent blessing. William, Harper, and Ethan sat together eating, conversing like a family always destined to meet. For Harper, every bite was sweet more than flavor. Symbols found a place, something never imagined possible, living streets. No longer girl alone, locket, nebulous memories. Now part something bigger, part family. "You know, Grandpa," said Harper, a mischievous smile biting another piece chocolate eclair. "Maybe lost sweets that day, but looking now, the best thing could have happened." Eyes shone, reflecting daylight happiness, newly discovered. "Because if you hadn't been for that, you would never find you." William squeezed, hand eyes teary, full love, pride. "My little one not only found us, but also saved us. Brought back something lost long ago, hope and love." Pulled her closer, hugging, feeling warmth, connection dreamed often. Ethan, watching, couldn't help smiling. "Think safe, say gain more than granddaughter and niece," said a voice charged with emotion. "Gain new chances, be better, value what really matters." And so, amidst laughter, sweets, emotional words, the bakery became a symbol of the rebirth Harrison family. Faced past pain, came out stronger, united by love, overcoming time, mistakes, losses. There in a moment knew the future built love, resilience, and of course, many shared chocolate eclairs. Looking at the two generations united by chocolate and forgiveness, William realized the truth that had evaded him his entire life. He had built skyscrapers and amassed fortunes, but his true legacy was sitting right there, wiping chocolate from her cheek. "We spend our lives building walls to protect our pride," William thought, a tear sliding down his aged cheek. "But it is only when those walls crumble that we can truly see the sun." He had lost decades to silence and anger, but in the twilight of his life, a small, hungry girl had taught him that it is never too late to say "I'm sorry," and never too late to come home. Love, he finally understood, was the only wealth that death could not take away. Have you ever believed in the healing power of family bonds? Or do you think it was just a coincidence? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If Harper and Grandpa William's story touched your heart, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to help us spread life's little miracles. Goodbye, and see you in the next story.